A poor rancher bet everything to buy a giant Apache woman, and later took her as his wife. Tomas was a poor rancher living in a small valley surrounded by rolling hills and dusty plains. His ranch was tiny, barely enough to grow a few crops and keep a couple of cows. Every day, from the first light of dawn until the sun dipped behind the hills, he worked. He mended fences, fed the animals, and dug the dry soil to make it ready for planting. Despite his hard work, life had never been kind to him. Rain came late, crops often failed, and the little money he earned was never enough to fix what broke on the ranch. Sometimes after a long day, he would sit by the edge of the stream that ran through his land, staring at the water and thinking about how different life could be if luck would finally smile on him. Tomas lived alone on the ranch. His parents had passed away when he was young, leaving him only the ranch, some old tools, and a stubborn mule named Pedro. The mule had been with him for many years, and though it often complained with loud brays, it was his only true companion in the quiet valley. At night, after a day of work, Tomas would talk to Pedro, telling him his worries and dreams. Pedro didn't answer, of course, but sometimes he seemed to nod, and that was enough for Tomas. The villagers around the valley knew Tomas well. They respected his honesty and hard work, but they also pitied him. "That poor rancher," they would say, shaking their heads. "He works like a horse, and yet he never has enough to eat or to fix his fences." Some tried to help by selling him tools on credit or giving him seeds for free, but Tomas always felt a mix of pride and shame. He hated asking for help, even though he needed it. Pride was one thing, but survival was another, and every day he struggled to balance both. One morning, as the sun rose in a golden haze, a strange sound reached Tomas's ears, a sound he had never heard before. It was a mixture of music, laughter, and shouting, coming from the main road that ran near the village. Curious, he put down his hoe, wiped his forehead, and walked toward the noise. When he arrived, he saw a crowd gathered around wagons painted in bright colors, with flags fluttering in the wind. Signs read, "The Wonders of the World, Strange Creatures, and Amazing Feats." "See the impossible," Tomas watched as the villagers marveled at the attractions. Acrobats performed daring tricks, clowns juggled, and exotic animals roamed behind cages. But then, in the center of it all, he saw her. A woman so tall and strong that she seemed larger than life. She moved gracefully despite her height, carrying herself with pride and confidence. Her skin was sun-kissed, and her dark eyes shone with intelligence. She wore traditional Apache attire, which made her presence even more striking. The crowd whispered about her in awe, calling her the giant Apache woman. From the first moment Tomas saw her, he felt something unusual, a strange mix of fascination, respect, and curiosity. He did not see her as a curiosity or a spectacle like the others. He saw a human being, strong and full of spirit. Something inside him stirred, a feeling he had never felt before. He felt that she was not only remarkable in appearance but also noble in heart. In that moment, standing at the edge of the crowd, Tomas forgot his hunger, his exhaustion, and even the troubles of his failing ranch. All he could think about was her. For several days, Tomas returned to the village to see the show. Every time, he stood quietly at the back, observing the Apache woman. He noticed the way she interacted with others, not with fear or anger, but with calm confidence. She smiled politely at the children who stared at her, helped the animals carefully, and sometimes sat alone, looking at the horizon with a thoughtful expression. Tomas began to admire her not just for her size, but for her dignity and intelligence. There was a strength in her presence that seemed almost magical, a combination of courage, grace, and quiet authority. The other villagers laughed at Tomas when he talked about her. "Why do you waste your time staring at that woman?" they asked. "She is not for people like us. She belongs to the traveling show. Focus on your ranch before it falls apart." But Tomas could not help himself. He felt as if fate had brought him to see her, and that he could not turn away. In the evenings, he would return to his small home on the ranch, thinking about her, imagining what it would be like to speak with her, to know her, or even to help her in some way. One afternoon, as he watched from a distance, Tomas noticed something different. The Apache woman seemed troubled. She looked toward the sky as if worried about the weather, or perhaps thinking about a place far away. Her expression was not sad but thoughtful, almost like someone longing for freedom or a life of her own choosing. Thomas felt a pang in his chest. He realized that her beauty and strength were only part of her story. There was a human heart inside her, full of dreams, struggles, and perhaps loneliness. He began to ask around discreetly, learning more about her life. He found out that she had been traveling with the show for years, performing and living in crowded wagons far from her home. She had no choice in the matter. The show owner had purchased her from someone else and treated her as a prized attraction. Tomas's heart went out to her. He had never experienced the life of someone trapped, forced to live for the amusement of others, and he felt a deep sympathy. The idea that she could live freely even in a small, simple place like his ranch became a dream he could not shake. Night after night, Tomas lay awake on his small cot, thinking about the impossible. How could a poor rancher like him ever hope to help such a remarkable woman? How could he give her freedom and safety when he barely had enough to feed himself? And yet, the thought would not leave him. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that he wanted to meet her, to know her, and maybe in some way to protect her. He was not sure if it was love or admiration or something more profound, but he knew one thing. He had to try. Then, one morning, a surprising opportunity arose. The show owner, a shrewd man with a booming voice, announced that he would sell some of his attractions to anyone willing to pay the price. Among them, the Apache woman was listed, though the price was so high that most villagers laughed at the idea. No one can buy her, they said. She is worth more than all the ranches in the valley combined. Tomas, however, did not laugh. Instead, his heart began to race. He realized that this could be his chance, the moment where his dream and reality could meet. The thought of giving her freedom, bringing her to his ranch, and knowing her in a real human way filled him with hope and courage unlike anything he had felt before. That evening, Tomas returned to his ranch and looked at the hills, imagining the impossible. Could he really buy the Apache woman? Could he risk everything he had, the ranch, his few savings, his beloved mule, just for a chance at giving her freedom? Most people would have thought him crazy, but Tomas could not ignore the pull in his heart. He knew that life had given him hardships, but it had also given him courage. Perhaps it was time to take a leap, to bet everything on one bold, impossible dream. And so, as the sun set over the valley, painting the sky in orange and pink, Tomas made a silent promise to himself. He would find a way to meet her, to talk to her, and if he could, he would do whatever it took to help her. He did not know how it would happen or if he would succeed, but he felt certain of one thing. He could not ignore the call of fate. The Apache woman had entered his life for a reason, and he would not rest until he discovered what that reason was. Tomas could not stop thinking about the Apache woman. Each morning as the sun rose over his small ranch, he found himself imagining her standing among the hills, free from the constraints of the traveling show. Her strength, her dignity, and the quiet intelligence in her eyes haunted him. But reality pressed hard. He was a poor rancher with barely enough to survive. How could he possibly own something, or rather, help someone so extraordinary? Every night he lay awake, wrestling with the impossible thought that he might actually try to buy her. The next morning, Tomas went back to the village with a determination that surprised even himself. The traveling show was still there, its colorful wagons and performers drawing crowds. He watched the Apache woman from a distance. She was practicing some performance with strength and precision, lifting objects many times heavier than herself, all while maintaining grace and poise. Tomas admired her more than ever, but he also felt a pang of worry. How could someone like her live a free life in the hands of a poor rancher like him? Word had spread among the villagers that the show owner would sell some attractions to those with enough money. Most people shook their heads at the idea.
"It's impossible," they said.
No one can buy her. She is worth a fortune, more than any of our homes or land. They laughed, thinking the whole idea ridiculous. But Tomas felt a spark inside him. He did not see it as a purchase or a gamble. He saw it as an opportunity to free her from a life she had not chosen, to give her respect and a safe place to live. He approached the show owner cautiously. The man was large, confident, and spoke with a booming voice that made most people feel small. Tomas explained that he was interested in buying the Apache woman. The owner's eyes widened. "You?" he said, looking at the small rancher with barely enough money to cover his daily meals.
Do you know what you are asking? She is my prized attraction.
She is worth more than 10 ranches like yours combined.
You must be out of your mind.
Tomas swallowed hard, feeling both fear and resolve. I may not have all the money now, he said carefully, but I am willing to offer everything I own. My ranch, my savings, even my mule. I can promise you that. The show owner laughed, a loud, mocking sound that echoed across the village square. You are bold, he said. I will give you that. But boldness is not enough to own her. Do you understand? Boldness alone will not buy a woman like her. Money is the only language I understand. Despite the owner's words, Tomas felt a fire burning inside him. He returned to his ranch and began calculating exactly how much he could offer. He counted every coin, every tool, every asset he had. He realized that even if he gave everything he owned, it would still fall short. But Tomas did not despair. He was a man who had survived droughts, failed crops, and harsh winters. If there was a chance, no matter how small, he would take it. He believed in the strength of his heart and the honesty of his intentions. Over the next few days, Tomas visited friends and neighbors trying to gather additional resources. Some were skeptical, shaking their heads, whispering that he had gone mad. Others, noticing his determination, offered small loans or assistance. Slowly, he managed to put together a significant sum. It was not nearly enough to cover the full price, but it was more than anyone had expected a poor rancher could gather. With each coin collected, Tomas's confidence grew. He felt that perhaps, just perhaps, the impossible could become possible. Finally, the day came when Tomas returned to the traveling show to make his offer. A crowd gathered, curious about what the poor rancher would attempt. The Apache woman watched quietly from her wagon, her dark eyes steady and observant. Tomas stood before the show owner, feeling his hands shake slightly but keeping his voice firm. I offer everything I have, he said. Please consider it.
The show owner examined him carefully.
He could see the determination in Tomas's eyes, a determination that was rare among those who came to see his show. He chuckled softly, rubbing his chin. You truly are brave, or perhaps foolish, he said. But let us see what you have. Tomas placed his coins and documents on the table, showing the full extent of his offer. The villagers watched in amazement, whispering among themselves. Many had expected him to fail, but he had risked everything he owned to make this bold move. The Apache woman observed silently, not with fear but with curiosity. She had never met someone willing to stake everything for her freedom. Something in her eyes softened, a hint of respect or perhaps understanding. She had been treated as a spectacle her entire life, but here was a man who saw her as a human being, not an attraction or a prize. The show owner leaned back in his chair, thinking carefully. This was unusual. No one had ever made such a daring offer, especially someone as poor as Tomas. He looked at the rancher for a long moment, then smiled. Very well, he said finally. I will accept your offer, but you must understand the risks. You are betting everything you have on one chance. There is no going back. Tomas nodded without hesitation. I understand, he said, and I accept. When the deal was finalized, the villagers erupted in whispers and astonishment. Some shook their heads in disbelief, saying that Tomas had lost his mind. Others, however, began to admire him, noting that courage sometimes required great risk. Tomas, for his part, felt a mixture of relief and nervous excitement. He had done the impossible. He had secured a chance to change both his life and the Apache woman's life forever. Bringing her to the ranch was a challenge. The journey was long and difficult. The roads were rough, and the wagons creaked and swayed. The Apache woman sat quietly, observing the world around her with calm attention. She asked few questions, but when she did, her voice was clear and confident, revealing a mind both sharp and thoughtful. Tomas admired her patience and composure. For someone so strong and proud, she carried herself with a gentle dignity that made him respect her even more.
Along the way, Tomas learned about her life.
She spoke of her family, her home, and the people she had left behind. She described the hardships of traveling with the show, the long hours, the endless performances, and the constant attention from curious onlookers. Tomas listened carefully, realizing that her life had been filled with challenges even greater than his own. He felt gratitude that he could offer her a place of safety, a small home where she could live freely and with dignity. By the time they reached the ranch, Tomas was exhausted but proud. The Apache woman stepped down from the wagon, her eyes taking in the small fields, the fences, and the hills that stretched beyond. She did not smile immediately, but she nodded, a subtle acknowledgement of the effort and sacrifice that had brought her here. Tomas felt a quiet joy. He had risked everything, and now he had a chance to begin something extraordinary, not just for himself, but for her. The villagers watched from a distance as the Apache woman walked across the fields. Some whispered about the courage of Tomas, others about the sheer audacity of bringing such a remarkable woman to a small ranch. Tomas, however, cared little for the gossip. He focused on the future, imagining the days ahead, working together, learning from each other, and perhaps finding a connection that went beyond what he had ever dreamed.
As night fell, Tomas sat on the porch of his small home, looking at the stars and reflecting on the day's events.
He realized that life had changed forever. He had risked everything, his home, his savings, even his reputation. But he had gained the chance to do something truly meaningful. He had brought freedom to someone who had never known it, and in the process, he had discovered a courage he did not know he possessed. For the first time in years, Tomas felt hope. Not just hope for his ranch or for wealth, but hope for life itself. He had taken a gamble that many would have called foolish, yet in doing so he had opened the door to a story that was entirely his own, a story of courage, risk, and the possibility of extraordinary human connection. When the Apache woman arrived at Tomas's ranch, the air was thick with curiosity and tension. She stepped off the wagon with a quiet dignity, her tall frame towering above the modest fences of the property. Tomas watched her carefully, unsure of how she would adjust to the simplicity of his small ranch. He had taken a great risk to bring her here, and now he realized that owning or helping someone so extraordinary came with challenges far beyond money or courage. At first, the Apache woman seemed unsure of her surroundings. The ranch was nothing like the traveling show. There were no crowds to marvel at her strength, no grand performances to showcase her abilities. Instead, there were small fields of crops, a few cows grazing slowly, and the wind whispering through the hills. She looked around carefully, her dark eyes taking in every detail: the worn fences, the rickety barn, the small wooden house where Tomas lived. It was a far cry from the excitement of the show, and yet she did not seem afraid. There was a calm in her presence, a confidence that reassured Tomas even when he doubted himself. The villagers, as always, were watching. Many whispered among themselves as they saw the giant Apache woman walking across the fields. Some were shocked that Tomas had actually succeeded. Others laughed quietly, shaking their heads. "He's brought her here," one villager said. "Can you believe it? That poor rancher thinks he can take care of someone like her." Yet despite the whispers and doubt, Tomas felt a quiet determination. He knew that nothing about this would be easy, but he was ready to face the challenges ahead. The first days were difficult. The Apache woman was not used to the slow rhythm of ranch life, and Tomas quickly realized that teaching her the tasks of daily work would require patience. She had grown up performing feats of strength, entertaining crowds, and living in constant motion. Here, there was nothing but quiet fields, the steady work of caring for animals, and the maintenance of a small home. At first, she moved cautiously, observing Tomas and his routine. She did not complain, but there was a quiet tension in her posture, a sense that she was waiting to see if this life could truly be different from the one she had known. Tomas began to guide her through the work, showing her how to feed the animals, mend fences, and tend the crops. She watched attentively, learning quickly. Her strength, once used for lifting heavy objects in performances, became a great advantage on the ranch. She could carry bales of hay effortlessly, repair fences faster than Tomas could imagine, and even lift water barrels that would have taken him multiple trips. Slowly, Tomas realized that she was not only adapting but thriving in this new environment. Despite her abilities, the Apache woman faced challenges she had never encountered before. She had never worked with soil, never understood the rhythms of planting and harvesting. She asked many questions, learning with care and curiosity. Tomas was impressed by her intelligence. She was not only strong, but she had a sharp mind, observing carefully, thinking critically, and often offering suggestions that improved his own methods. Their relationship began to shift subtly from one of caretaker and newcomer to partners learning together. The animals, too, seemed to respond to her presence. The cows, usually skittish around new people, moved calmly when she approached. The chickens followed her footsteps, and even Pedro, the mule, seemed to recognize her as someone to respect. Tomas could not help but smile at the quiet harmony forming on his ranch. It was as if her presence, once a source of uncertainty, had begun to bring balance and energy to the land itself. Yet not everything was smooth. The villagers continued to whisper, some openly mocking Tomas's choice. "He'll never manage her," they said. "She is too proud, too strong, too different for a simple ranch life." Tomas ignored them, focusing instead on the work and on building trust. He understood that earning her respect and cooperation would take time, patience, and kindness. He was prepared for that. After all, he had risked everything to bring her here. He could not fail now because of the doubts of others. As days turned into weeks, the Apache woman began to reveal more of her personality. She had a quiet humor, often smiling at small things that others might overlook. She spoke gently to Tomas, offering advice or commentary that reflected her sharp mind. She had lived a life where many people treated her as an attraction rather than a person, and now she was learning that here, she could be herself. Tomas noticed small gestures, how she arranged the tools neatly after using them, how she tended to the plants with care, and how she spoke to the animals with patience and respect. It became clear that she was not just strong in body, but strong in spirit as well. Tomas began to admire her not just for her physical strength, but for her resilience and intelligence. She taught him new ways to approach the ranch, suggesting improvements to irrigation, rearranging the barn to make work more efficient, and even helping him find better ways to protect the crops from pests. Slowly, the Apache woman became an invaluable part of the ranch, not as a guest or curiosity, but as an equal partner. The villagers began to notice this change as well. Some who had mocked Tomas now spoke quietly about the wisdom of the woman he had brought. Despite this growing respect, there were still challenges. The Apache woman was not used to the isolation of the ranch. She had spent years in towns, performing in front of crowds, and being constantly surrounded by people. Here, the silence of the hills and the long hours of work sometimes weighed heavily on her. Tomas noticed this and made efforts to engage her in conversation, to share stories of his life, and to include her in decisions about the ranch. He wanted her to feel not trapped, but welcomed and valued. Slowly, a rhythm formed. Each morning they worked together in the fields, tending the crops and caring for the animals. They shared meals, talking quietly about their day, their dreams, and their hopes for the future. The Apache woman began to laugh at Tomas's jokes, sometimes teasing him gently, and he in turn found himself smiling more than he had in years. A mutual respect and understanding began to blossom, though neither of them acknowledged it openly. One evening, as the sun dipped below the hills and the sky turned golden, Tomas and the Apache woman sat on the porch, watching Pedro graze in the distance. She looked at the horizon with her usual calm expression, and Tomas noticed a hint of contentment in her eyes. For the first time she seemed truly at ease, as if she had found a place where she belonged. Tomas felt a sense of pride and relief. The gamble he had taken, bringing her here, was beginning to show signs of reward. Over time, the villagers slowly grew accustomed to her presence. At first they avoided her, whispering and staring from afar. But as they saw her contribute to the ranch, using her strength and intelligence to improve the land, their skepticism began to fade. Some even came to offer advice or help, though cautiously. The Apache woman who had once been a spectacle began to earn respect not for her size or uniqueness, but for her abilities and character. Tomas realized that bringing her to the ranch had been about more than risk or curiosity. It had been about partnership. She was not just a woman he had purchased, but a person with her own thoughts, dreams, and wisdom. Together, they could make the ranch thrive in ways neither could have done alone. He felt a deep gratitude for her presence, and a quiet hope that their lives, now intertwined, would continue to grow stronger with each passing day. By the end of the season, the ranch looked different. The fences were stronger, the crops healthier, and the animals well cared for. The Apache woman had become an integral part of the land, her strength and intelligence leaving a lasting mark. Tomas often caught himself smiling as he watched her work, realizing that what had begun as a gamble had turned into something far greater, the beginning of a life shared with someone extraordinary. Though challenges remained, harsh weather, the demands of ranch life, and the lingering doubts of villagers, Tomas no longer feared them. He knew that together he and the Apache woman could face whatever came next. The partnership they had formed, built on trust, respect, and courage, was stronger than any obstacle. And though they did not yet speak of love, a quiet bond was growing, subtle but unbreakable, in the shared labor, laughter, and silent understanding that passed between them each day. Over time, the relationship between Tomas and the Apache woman grew deeper. What had begun as curiosity, admiration, and mutual respect gradually transformed into a quiet, unspoken bond. Each day they spent together on the ranch brought them closer, though neither spoke openly of their feelings. Their connection was subtle, revealed in the way they worked side by side, shared responsibilities, and watched out for one another. The Apache woman had become more than a helper. She had become a companion, someone whose presence Tomas could not imagine living without. The seasons changed, and with them the rhythm of ranch life. Summers brought long days of sun, and the two worked tirelessly to ensure the crops thrived. Winters were harsh, testing both their endurance and their determination. Yet, through every trial, their bond grew stronger. Tomas found himself admiring her strength not only in work but in character. She was fearless, calm in difficult situations, and wise in her decisions. He learned from her patience, her careful planning, and her ability to see solutions where he might have only seen problems. One day a sudden storm hit the valley. Heavy rain poured down and strong winds threatened to destroy the crops. Tomas and the Apache woman worked together tirelessly to secure the animals and protect the fields. She lifted heavy sacks and guided the livestock with skill and precision. Tomas was amazed at her courage and efficiency. The storm passed, leaving minor damage, but both were exhausted. That evening, sitting by the fire, they shared a meal in silence, tired but satisfied. It was moments like these that made Tomas realize how much he relied on her presence, not just for help on the ranch, but for strength, support, and comfort in life's difficulties. As the days passed, small gestures began to reveal the depth of their feelings. Tomas noticed how she would often watch him carefully, a gentle smile appearing when he did something kind or thoughtful. She began to anticipate his needs, helping him before he even asked. For her part, the Apache woman found herself trusting him more than anyone she had ever met. She confided in him, sharing stories from her past, moments of sadness, and dreams she had kept hidden. Tomas listened with patience, never judging, always offering understanding. Each story she told brought them closer, their connection deepening like roots intertwining beneath the soil. The villagers, who had once whispered doubts and skepticism, began to notice the bond forming between them. Some admired it quietly, while others were surprised that a poor rancher and such a remarkable woman could find harmony together. Even the children in the village began to seek her out, fascinated not by her size or strength, but by her gentle kindness and the wisdom in her words. She taught them simple lessons about nature, animals, and respect for the land. Tomas watched with pride, realizing that the Apache woman had brought not only companionship to his life but also inspiration to the entire community. One afternoon, while they worked together in the fields, Tomas noticed the way her eyes sparkled when she smiled at something small. A bird perched on a fence, a flower blooming unexpectedly.
In that moment, he felt a warmth in his chest he had never experienced before.
It was not admiration alone nor simple respect. It was a deeper feeling, a recognition of someone who had become indispensable to his life. He wondered if she felt the same way, though he feared speaking aloud what might change the delicate balance they had built. Time passed, and their bond grew stronger in quiet, meaningful ways. They shared laughter over small mistakes, spilled water, tripped over tools, or stubborn animals refusing to obey. They shared stories in the evenings, sitting near the fire and speaking of dreams, hopes, and plans for the future. Slowly, the Apache woman began to smile more openly, her eyes softening when she looked at Tomas. He, in turn, found himself feeling lighter, happier, and more at peace than he had ever known. Life on the ranch was still hard, but it was no longer lonely. Together, they faced challenges, celebrated small victories, and discovered the joy of companionship. One day, a traveling merchant passed through the village, offering news from distant towns. He spoke of new tools, improved seeds, and ways to increase the ranch's productivity. Tomas and the Apache woman listened carefully, discussing how to apply the ideas to their own land. The conversation flowed naturally, with each contributing equally. It was clear to both that they valued each other's opinions, insight, and judgment. This equality, born from respect and trust, formed the foundation of their growing affection. Love was not yet spoken aloud, but it was present in every shared glance, every helping hand, and every moment of understanding. During the harvest season, their teamwork became almost seamless. The Apache woman's strength made tasks easier, but it was her careful observation and planning that truly transformed the work. Tomas admired how she approached problems calmly and logically, and he often marveled at her ability to find solutions where he had none. She, in turn, appreciated his determination and the quiet kindness that guided his decisions. They began to depend on each other in ways neither had experienced before, forming a partnership rooted not just in work, but in trust, admiration, and subtle affection. One evening, after a long day of harvesting, they walked together along the hills surrounding the ranch. The sun was low, painting the valley in golden orange. They spoke little, letting the silence carry their thoughts. At one point, the Apache woman stopped and looked out over the land, her eyes reflecting the fading light. Tomas noticed the softness in her gaze, the quiet calm that contrasted with her usual strength. In that moment, he realized that he did not merely admire her anymore. He cared for her deeply, in a way that transcended friendship or gratitude. She turned to him then, her expression gentle but direct. "Tomas," she said softly, "I have never known a place where I could feel safe, respected, and free. You have given me that. I am grateful, more than words can say." Tomas felt his heart swell. He struggled to find the right words, knowing that speaking his feelings could change everything. But he could no longer hide the truth.
"I feel the same," he admitted quietly. "I have never met anyone like you."
"You have changed my life in ways I cannot describe. I care for you more than I ever expected to." Her eyes softened further, and for the first time they shared a moment of complete understanding. It was not loud or dramatic. There was no grand declaration. Instead, it was a quiet recognition of something profound, a bond that had grown through shared effort, trust, and respect. From that day forward, their connection became deeper, their gestures more intimate, and their conversations more personal. They laughed together, worked together, and shared dreams for the future, each finding comfort in the other's presence. The villagers who had once doubted them now spoke differently. They noticed the quiet affection in the way Tomas and the Apache woman worked together. They saw the way she cared for him, anticipating his needs, and the way he protected and valued her. Slowly, admiration replaced skepticism. Children played nearby, watching them with wonder, and even the elders nodded in respect, recognizing that something extraordinary had grown quietly on the small ranch. As seasons changed again, it became clear that the bond between Tomas and the Apache woman was unbreakable. Life on the ranch was still filled with hard work, unpredictable weather, and occasional failures, but they faced every challenge together. Their partnership, built on respect and trust, had evolved into love, quiet, steady, and enduring. Neither felt the need to rush or declare it loudly. Their actions, their care for each other, and their shared commitment to the ranch spoke louder than words. One evening, sitting together by the fire, Tomas looked at the Apache woman and smiled. "I never thought I could be this happy," he said quietly.
You have changed my life in ways I never imagined.
She smiled in return, her eyes reflecting both warmth and pride. "And you have given me freedom and a home," she replied.
"I feel safe, respected, and valued. That is more than I could have hoped for." In that moment, neither needed more. Their hearts had spoken through their deeds, their care, and the quiet, unbreakable bond they had formed. Through shared labor, laughter, and quiet moments of understanding, their love blossomed naturally. It was not sudden or dramatic. It grew steadily, rooted in the soil of the ranch, nurtured by trust, respect, and shared experience. The Apache woman and Tomas discovered that love could grow quietly, deeply, and with resilience. Just like the crops they tended together, thriving against the challenges of the land and life itself. As time passed, the bond between Tomas and the Apache woman grew stronger, transforming into something deeper than either had expected. What began as curiosity and admiration had become love, quiet but unshakable, built on trust, respect, and shared life. Their days on the ranch were filled with hard work, yet each task seemed lighter when they faced it together. Every morning as the sun rose over the hills, they worked side by side, tending to crops, repairing fences, and caring for the animals, their movements synchronized as if they had been partners for a lifetime. The villagers, who had once doubted Tomas and whispered about his decisions, now watched with admiration. They saw how the Apache woman contributed to the ranch, not just with her strength, but with intelligence, careful thought, and kindness. Her presence transformed the small ranch into a place of productivity and order. The animals seemed happier, the crops thrived, and even Pedro, the stubborn mule, appeared more content. Slowly, respect replaced the earlier skepticism, and neighbors began to offer assistance or advice. No longer seeing the couple as an oddity, but as an example of courage, partnership, and resilience. Tomas and the Apache woman began to talk more about the future. They shared their dreams, hopes, and plans. She spoke of wanting to learn more about ranch life, to contribute in meaningful ways, and to create a home where both could thrive. Tomas, in turn, shared his visions of expanding the ranch, improving the fields, and building a life that would honor both of them. They found joy in planning together, realizing that their partnership was more than practical. It was personal, emotional, and life-changing. One day, after a long day of work, Tomas suggested they formalize their partnership in a more permanent way. He spoke of marriage, not as a grand gesture, but as a natural continuation of the bond they had built over months of shared effort, understanding, and affection. The Apache woman considered it quietly, her calm strength evident as she weighed the decision. She had lived a life where she had little control, always moved and directed by others. Yet here was someone who respected her, valued her mind and spirit, and loved her for who she was. With a gentle smile, she agreed. Marriage, she felt, was not about ceremony alone, but about trust, commitment, and building a life together. The wedding was simple, held on the ranch under the open sky. Villagers came to witness the union, some with curiosity, others with genuine joy. There was no extravagant display, no costly celebration, only heartfelt words, laughter, and the warmth of a community that had come to respect the couple. Tomas stood beside the Apache woman, feeling a quiet pride. He remembered the day he had first seen her at the traveling show, the gamble he had taken, and the long journey they had shared to reach this moment. It was a testament to courage, faith, and the enduring power of hope. After the ceremony, life continued much as it had before, but with a new sense of purpose and joy. The couple worked together on the ranch, raising crops, tending animals, and improving the land. Each day was filled with both labor and laughter, as they learned more about each other and themselves. The Apache woman proved to be invaluable. not just in strength but in wisdom. She suggested new ways to plant crops, care for animals, and protect the fields from harsh weather. Tomas listened, learned, and grew alongside her, grateful for her guidance and presence. Over time, they expanded the ranch, using their combined skills and efforts to increase productivity. The fields became more fruitful, the fences sturdier, and the animals healthier. They even planted a small orchard, nurturing young trees that would provide fruit for years to come. Their hard work and partnership turned the ranch into a thriving, sustainable place, a symbol of what could be achieved through courage, determination, and mutual respect. The couple also welcomed children into their lives, raising them with the same values they cherished: honesty, courage, respect, and kindness. The Apache woman taught the children about her heritage, sharing stories of her family, culture, and the lessons she had learned from life. Tomas taught them about the land, the animals, and the rewards of hard work and patience. Together they created a home filled with love, learning, and shared responsibility. The ranch became not just a place of survival, but a place of growth, laughter, and hope. Neighbors and villagers began to visit more often, drawn by the story of the couple and the thriving ranch. They saw the result of bold choices, hard work, and unwavering trust. Tomas and the Apache woman welcomed them with warmth, sharing advice, knowledge, and encouragement. Their life together became an example, showing that even the most unlikely partnerships could flourish with respect, courage, and dedication. Years passed, and the couple grew older, their love and partnership deepening with time. They had faced droughts, storms, and hardships, yet each challenge had strengthened their bond rather than weakened it. The ranch, now a flourishing testament to their efforts, stood as a symbol of their resilience, courage, and unwavering belief in each other. They often sat together in the evenings, watching the sun set over the hills, reflecting on their journey and the improbable path that had brought them together. Tomas sometimes thought back to the day he had first seen the Apache woman at the traveling show, standing among the crowds as if she belonged to the world and yet apart from it. He remembered the risk he had taken, offering everything he owned for a chance to bring her to his ranch. He realized that what he had risked in money and possessions was nothing compared to the reward he had received in love, companionship, and shared life. The gamble had not only changed his destiny, but hers as well, giving both of them a home, freedom, and a family built on trust and respect. The Apache woman, for her part, often reflected on her journey. She had once been treated as a spectacle, moved from place to place with little control over her life. Now she had found stability, respect, and genuine love. She had built a home, not as a performer or an object of curiosity, but as a partner, mother, and valued member of the community. The life she and Tomas had created together was filled with meaning, hard work, joy, and a quiet happiness that neither had expected but both deeply cherished. Even as they grew older, the couple remained active on the ranch. The Apache woman continued to teach the children and guide the work of the farm, while Tomas oversaw the animals and managed the land. Their partnership was seamless, built on years of understanding, compromise, and shared effort. They had learned that love was not just about emotion. It was about trust, respect, and the ability to face life's challenges together. Their story became known throughout the valley, shared among villagers as a tale of courage, faith, and determination. People spoke of the poor rancher who had risked everything to bring a remarkable woman to his home, and of the Apache woman who had embraced a new life with strength, dignity, and grace. The legend of their partnership served as inspiration, showing that with courage, honesty, and perseverance, even the most unlikely dreams could be realized. As the years went on, Tomas and the Apache woman often sat together on the porch, watching their children play and the fields sway in the wind. They would sometimes laugh, remembering the challenges they had faced, and other times fall into quiet reflection, grateful for the life they had built. Each moment together was a reminder that their gamble, their courage, and their trust in each other had created something far greater than they had imagined. A life filled with love, purpose, and lasting happiness. When they looked back on their journey, they saw not just the struggles, but the triumphs, the moments of shared laughter, the victories over hardship, and the quiet satisfaction of a life well lived. They had turned a small, struggling ranch into a thriving home. built a family grounded in love and respect, and created a legacy that would inspire generations to come. The poor rancher and the giant Apache woman had risked everything, and in doing so they had discovered the true meaning of partnership, courage, and enduring love. In the end, their story was not just about wealth, possessions, or risk. It was about human connection, trust, and the choices that define a life. They had shown that love could grow quietly, steadily, and resiliently, even in the face of doubt, hardship, or difference. Their bond, forged through courage and shared experience, remained unbreakable, a testament to the extraordinary power of faith, determination, and mutual respect. Tomas often thought that he had never truly understood life until he had taken that first bold step, the gamble that had seemed impossible. He realized that taking risks for what matters most, for freedom, love, and trust, could lead to the most extraordinary outcomes, and the Apache woman, standing beside him, knew that her life had been transformed, not by luck alone, but by the courage of a man willing to risk everything for her well-being and freedom. Together they had created a life of purpose, love, and joy, a life worth every challenge they had faced.